Okay, we'll continue with the open budget work session for May 21st, 2018. The next item agenda is with the Wicomico County Library. Good morning. Good morning.
What, are they gonna leave you?
You can
Yeah.
I saw you looking back.
if you all would like to come up, you certainly could, if
I
you'd
know,
like to.
I know. They're welcome to come up.
They're coming.
Okay, well then I'll move over one. How's that? We'll do it that way.
Just if you could, state your name for the public and your position.
I'm Maida Finch, and I'm the chair of the Board of Trustees.
I'm Richard Keenan. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
One for the two of you to share.
Okay.
There's,
Get one more.
Yeah.
oh, absolutely. Okay. Then I'm gonna steal yours.
Yeah.
Give that one to John. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Thank you for giving us some time on your very busy schedule. I'm Andrea Bursler. I am the Executive Director for Wicomico Public Libraries.
I'm Maida Finch, chair of the Board of Trustees.
And Richard Keenan, Board of Trustees.
You just want me to sort of dive
If
in
you
here,
could.
John?
Yeah,
The
thanks.
packet that I've given you is a mirror image of the packet that we submitted on our original budget proposal when we discussed the budget with the executive's office and staff several weeks ago. On the right-hand side is the actual budget presentation. It looks like this, has the pictures on the front. It's very simple. In this document outlines what we're asking for and why we were asking for it. And I think we can go through this very quickly and hopefully give the council some insight into what the library needs in order to move forward and be the 21st century library that Wicomico County actually needs. The page inside is a set of statistics based upon last year's fiscal numbers, including the fact that we had over 300,000 visits to the library's 3 locations and on the bookmobile.
300,000?
300,000, yes.
How do you do that? Sign in?
No, we have people counters at the main library. We know how many children we process through the bookmobile. And then we do sampling at the 2 smaller branches. They're 2,700 square feet and 1,400 square feet,
So the bookmobile counts as visits too?
it does. In fact, the bookmobile accounts for about 13% of our total circulation. It is a very busy 500 square foot vehicle. Excuse me. About 17,800 people came to our programs, classes, and workshops. We had over 3,000 visits to the Job Search Center and over 1,500 visits to our Homework Help Center. Those are some of our signature pieces. And then we had 39 people who were enrolled in Project Read, which is one of our premier services. That's the adult literacy where that we do one-on-one tutoring. At present, we are up to 57 individuals currently enrolled in Project Read who are getting one-on-one help with all kinds of literacy. The next page is a very brief budget history of what has happened to the library's budget since the 2008 economic downturn. During that time, the library's budget was cut $600,000, the county funding for the library. It was a 40% cut of our total county funding. During that time, we also instituted furlough days that mirrored what the county did. We reduced our staff by 19 positions. We froze all of our salaries. We deferred infrastructure and technology purchases. We reduced dramatically. We almost had to cut in half our collection budget. And we took the bookmobile off the road 2 days a week. To date, those steps all mirrored things that were going on in the county at the time. We understood this was an economic downturn. We had to take our fair share of this.
How many employees do you have now?
I currently have 60 employees now.
60?
60, that's full-time and part-time. There's 35 full-time equivalent staff members. So if they were all full-time, I would have 35 staff.
So did you have 79 or did you rehire some?
We've rehired a few. We've gotten a little of that money back, but not all of it. At one point, we were close to, we had 70 or 71 staff, I believe is the top number. But many of the staff we have brought back in a part-time only capacity because it's all we can afford. If you look at the next page, it shows you where the bottom 5 libraries in the state are when it comes to per capita funding, where they were in 2009 and where they are now. And as you can see, Wicomico County still loses ground per capita. The rest of the libraries have sort of leveled off. This chart, the 2015 numbers, were the last we had when we made this chart. We've gotten 2016 since, and I'll show you those in a moment. But right now, you can see we started at $28 a person, and that was in 2009 after the economic downturn, and we are now at $25 a person. And that's because the population of Wicomico County continues to grow. So we have more people that we have to service, but we're not getting enough funds to expand our services for them. So what we asked for in our budget request was a $449,000 increase in the funding. That money, that number came from taking the difference between what we got in 2008 that we still have not recovered, because we are still at 84% of our budget before the economic downturn. So we are still in a red budget technically. Okay, in 2008, the original money we were supposed to receive was 1.6 million. We didn't get that. We still haven't gotten to 1.6 million. Last year's budget was 1.4.
So your request was
So we
449,000
requested,
more?
if you take the difference between 1.4 and 1.6 and you adjust it for inflation, that's what it is, $449,000. That would give us the purchasing power the library had before the economic downturn. That's what we're asking for. That would allow us to restore the library to that 2008 sort of ground zero, square one, whatever phrase you want to use, and allow us to start growing again. To this point, we have simply been putting Band-Aids on and making small progress. And it's been 10 years. It's time for the library to be back where it needs to be. And that was what we
Can I ask you a
asked.
question on one of the bullets on the first page that you mentioned? You said there were 3,007 job search
Yes.
visits. It doesn't One Stop Job Market do something like that? Or do you guys work with them, or?
We do. Actually, that program is run, is partly funded by a grant from the Lower Shore Workforce Alliance, which also funds the One Stop Job Market out at Tri-County Building. But we're the only one downtown. You have to get on a bus, and you have to take a bus out there or get transportation out there. The One Stop Market downtown closed about 5.5 years ago. And when it did, our visits doubled almost overnight. And they have continued to increase since. And we're looking for additional funding to try and put a third staff member in there so we can extend the hours. It is a vital resource and a vital service that we provide to the downtown community, the people who need it most. So that was our ask. As you can see on the last page, that would bring us to an operating budget funded from the county at $1.8 million. That would allow us to do all the things that you see in that bulleted list. That would allow us to extend our hours in the evening so that we can be open 4 nights a week, which is something that we are continually asked to do. It would allow us to continue to grow the reader van, which allows us to service preschools and help them prepare children for kindergarten and have them kindergarten ready. It would allow us to extend the hours for job search and homework help. It would provide more funding for Project Read, which is a highly successful program that's now being modeled throughout other libraries in the state. It would allow us to restore funding to our collection, buy more books, buy more movies, provide them to the citizenry. It would allow us to digitize our daily time archives, which is something that is desperately needed. We have an archive that goes back to the 1940s, but we are in risk of losing that. It will eventually deteriorate because it's on microfilm, and it needs to be digitized. It will also allow us to better maintain the facility that we're in, improve our janitorial services, do some more minor improvements to the building, things that don't fall within the capital budget. And it would also allow us then to extend our computer club and some of our other STEM programming.
Well, you know, we can, of course, the budget is Bob hands it to us supposedly as balanced, but we can cut from it and suggest it goes somewhere else, but we have no authority to make it go somewhere else, so.
Oh, I understand that completely.
The one thing, kind of, the other day, you were in, and there was another one lady here that was basically saying that the employees didn't get the raise that the counties did.
They didn't.
Well, that's not up to the county to give them raises, other than, all it is to us is to give you money. I mean, we don't, the county doesn't dictate how much of a raise that your employees get.
No, I understand that, but the
But that
practice
wasn't
had,
made clear.
the practice
Yeah.
had been, up until last year, that whenever the county employees were given a raise, the county would contact the library, and I assumed, out of respect for the fact that we're a quasi-governmental agency, would ask us, what will it cost for you to give your employees exactly what we're giving our employees? And we would give them a number, and that number would be added to the budget.
So that didn't happen.
That did not happen last year, and it
But-
did not happen this year.
But it's also, like I said before, we don't, it's not dictated that you
No,
do it.
I realize that, but you have to understand, my employees are some of the poorest paid employees in this county. I have people working for me full-time who are
That's not
below
what
the
I-
poverty
That's not
level.
what I was getting at. What I was getting at, it
So-
wasn't made clear the other day how it worked. You kind of made it look like that all the other county employees were getting raised, but the county was denying your employees raises.
Well,
Why?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with the flat funding, they are, because I also have the health insurance increase. We're in the same pool as the county employees for health insurance. So that same 14 or 15% increase that the county is seeing in health insurance, we're seeing. It's going to cost us almost $50,000 for that increase, and I have no additional funds to do that. None.
Yeah, I mean, it seems you're a bit in the same situation as Warwick in the sense that we don't set Warwick's employee budget either, but, you know, we just heard from Ray that he wants to give him a 5% increase. He's gonna give him a 2%, you know, what's money for a 5%. So, I mean, it's, you know, we spend a lot of money, you know, there's all these organizations that we're kind of quasi in control of, you know, that, you know, we provide money for, but they set their own salaries and
Right.
structure. But, yeah, they come to us to fund that sort of thing, and we gotta figure that out. But, yeah, I mean, ultimately, how you pay your employees is what you do, but it's dependent somewhat on the money we give you and the money the state provides
Yes,
to you.
it
So,
is.
Yeah, but ultimately, I guess, you or the library board, does library board set, I mean, it's
The,
mainly
the
you,
library
yeah.
board administrates a lot of the HR function.
Yeah.
I present them a budget, but it is up to them to review it and approve it, and that would include anything that we would do for our employees in the way of salaries. So, yes, it is certainly up to us, and if there was money there, it would be our decision whether to give across-the-board raises or merit pay raises or those sort of things. But when the county gives you the same amount of money you got the last year, and you know you're going to have 50,000 more that you have to pay this year, the discussion about salary increases is sort of a moot point. There is no money for that. And it's pretty obvious to me that you know, anybody who'd looked at the budget would be able to tell that.
So what is I guess, I don't know if the board's discussed it, I don't think it has. What is the 50,000, I mean, how is that gonna be mitigated?
Well, it's a $50,000 increase in our cost for healthcare. That's what it's going, it's about $48,700 and some dollars that it's gonna cost us in order to absorb the healthcare increase, the same healthcare increase that the county's gonna see and the Board of Ed's gonna see. We have the same program. So I've got to figure out somewhere in a budget now that's been flatlined, where I'm gonna come up with $47,000. And I have to try and keep my staff happy because they're not getting a raise. They see other people around them getting in the county. And I'll be honest with you, gentlemen, I get very passionate about my staff. They're good people. They work very hard. And, you know, if anything can be done for them, to me, that would be the first priority, really. They are just amazing people.
I appreciate your passion, and it's obvious, and thank you for that. I believe the county executive told us that we, the county, is seeing a 17% increase in our Blue Cross Blue Shield
Yes.
health benefits too. You didn't have your salaries listed on here, so we couldn't get an idea of how they were paid or underpaid. So it's hard to reflect on that. I did have a question though on this car capital expense for $25,000. What is that for?
The county provided us a van for the reader van service, and that service provides professionally developed curriculum to home preschools, home daycares. These are the daycares that have the worst kindergarten readiness tests in the county. They tend to have the smaller number of students, somewhere between 6 and 10 or 12 students, that are taken care of in a licensed home daycare. When we started identifying what part of the kindergarten readiness piece the library could have the most impact in, these home daycares were the ones that jumped out at us. So we developed these totes. We got grants to run this whole program initially. The PNC gave us a grant, the Community Foundation gave us a grant, and we developed, originally we developed 40 of these boxes, and in the boxes, they're like self-contained curriculum for these daycare providers, so they don't have to go out and do all the work. They're theme-based, they have books, they have educational toys, they have music, they have activities, and every month they're delivered to the home care and then, or the daycare, and then they keep it for 4 weeks. And then at the end of 4 weeks, we come and collect it and we bring them a new one. The program was hugely successful. We started with 20 home cares. We're up to 55 with a waiting list. And what's happening is that these home care providers are now being provided with some additional staff, additional development, because our person is able to go out and model for them some of the activities they can do. We've made it about as easy as we possibly can for them to integrate literacy and words and math into their everyday activity, which is the best way for them to improve their kindergarten readiness of their students. The scores for these particular providers were down in the 20s, 26, 27% of their students were kindergarten ready. And we're hoping that with the, when all the data comes out from the last round of testing and from the next round of testing, which will be after the school year next year, that we will see continued improvement in both the overall scores, but in these particular areas as well. No one else is serving these people at this point.
But there's no van for that was last year's.
That was last year. There's no van this year. The van was last year. And the van was so that we could make this a, we could extend it, we could go to more daycares, because we just didn't have.
Why doesn't the bookmobile go to these daycares? I've seen them at other daycares.
Because the bookmobile is more of a borrow a book. We don't have the whole curriculum piece. We don't have all the activities on the bookmobile. The bookmobile has really been modeled to serve the Title I schools. And it provides entertainment reading and encourages additional outside the classroom reading for the children in the Title I schools. And it is busy 5 days a week. I can have it busy 7 days a week if the schools were open 7 days a
Do you
week.
get Title I funding?
We do not, no.
It sounded, when you're talking, it sounds like services are overlapping with the Board of Ed.
Yes and no. The Board of Ed's media specialists provide the required reading. The libraries there provide required reading for the students, what they have to read for their classroom, what they have to read for their curriculum. We supplement that. We provide books for the students that they can take home and they can enjoy, simply to enjoy reading, because that's very important. In addition, we've started a student library card program this last year. Every student in Wicomico County now has a library card to Wicomico Public Libraries. It's their lunch number. It allows them to check out 5 books, completely fine-free, completely risk-free. All we ask is they bring the thing back if they possibly can. And the idea is that the more accessible books are, the easier it is for children to borrow books, the more they're going to read. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
I think it's a great initiative. I mean, it complements the Board of Education's efforts,
Exactly.
which they've acknowledged as far as pre-K as where they're trying to move forward. And it's, from what I understand, it's very successful as well.
It is. In
As far
fact,
as-
the Reader Van program, the state library recognized it as an exemplary innovative program and has 5 libraries on the Western Shore that they're now helping to start the same program in. So it's
Anytime you can get a child to read a book is great.
precisely, and that's our, we are an educator in this community, and our job is to get as close as we can to the Board of Ed and work with them as closely as we possibly can. And so there's no gap at all in a child's ability to get a book, read, or develop language skills.
I have one more question and I'll be
Go ahead.
done. I was trying to look through here. What online services do you have? 'Cause I know
Yeah, we'd need a whole
kids now
packet
have
this size.
smartphones and laptops and,
Some of the children do. A lot of them do not have internet at home. If, on the left side of your packet is our brand-new newsletter. It just came out this week. It has all of our summer reading stuff in it, and there are references to many of the online programs that we provide as well. Not all of them. I could have a book this big full just of the online stuff. But if you go to the middle of the thing, the middle of the newsletter where it's stapled, you'll see it says visit us online. There's a whole list of things there. And those are all available for free with your library card, including the student cards. So all the students of Wicomico County now have access to all of these databases, plus about 40 more for free with their lunch ID number.
are you involved with that Comcast program that allows lower income families or students to get a computer very cheap?
We
and
give them the information
give
on
them
it.
$10 a month?
That's really kind of all we do with it.
Yeah. So I know that goes to the Board of Ed as well.
Yes,
and
yeah.
That would be great.
We support it, we give them information on it, but
do
that's
have it.
pretty much the extent of our role with that.
Okay, thank you.
So the total amount that you're asking for in your budget, the state is contributing about
It's
a
just
little
over $1
$1
million,
so the
yes.
state's contributing over $1 million. Did the state increase their funding to you as opposed to last year?
It does. It goes up a little bit each year because the population increases, and it's based on a per capita, very convoluted formula that mirrors the Board of Ed's, and no one can quite figure it out.
Yeah.
But there's a pool, it's run through the formula. If you, and I'll show you on the right-hand side if you'll indulge me for just one more moment. On the right-hand side of your thing, there's also a chart that looks like this.
Right.
This is the chart that I've been showing to some people, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of embarrassed to do it. On the front, you will see the per capita funding for Wicomico Public Libraries. It's a bar chart. It's on the
Yeah.
right-hand side. That is our fiscal 16 per capita funding compared to all the other libraries in the state. The second page of those charts, if you turn to the second page, is where the state funding only is for all the libraries in the state. Our state funding is $11.58 a person. We're fifth in the state in state funds. But page 3 is our county funds. And even though we're fifth in the state, it doesn't make up enough to get us anywhere near being out of the basement for total funding per capita for libraries in the state. This is why this library struggles so much, because we just don't have the funding per person to run our library.
Andrea, are we duplicating services with other departments in Wicomico County? I know you were talking about the one-stop job search and that, and then, of course, I know you. So I'm wondering, is there a lot of duplication of services with other departments in with the county's funding? Or
Not that I'm
not funding
aware
as
of.
far as that goes?
Not that I'm aware of. We really, when I first came 6 years ago, we sort of had hit bottom. I mean, the library was getting $1 million a year from the county, and it was really tough. And we went through and we did almost 16, 18 months of assessing everything the library was doing. Do we need to still do this? Is there someone else in the county that's doing it? Is it something that we could partner with them on? We went through every policy, we went through every activity, we went through every resource, and we tried to either partner, offload, make more efficient, whatever it was we could do to keep the library running. I think we did a pretty good job of it. We got a new strategic plan out of that process. We supplement a lot of what happens. We partner with a lot of people, but I don't believe that we duplicate much of anything. Like the one-stop job market, we're their partner. They have the setup out at the Tri-County building. We have the one downtown. Both locations are necessary. You couldn't service the population that needs those resources at one location. Neither location is large enough, neither location has enough staff, and neither location is accessible to the communities that need it. So those are the kind of things we look at whenever we bring on a new service. Is there anyone else doing it? Is there someone else we can partner with? Is there something that maybe we could just provide space and invite them to come do what it is they do downtown? We try and be really careful about duplicating effort because it's a waste, and we don't have anything that we can waste.
There's a difference between duplicating and complementing
Correct.
those. Does the state recommend those type of programs?
The state library does. The state library recommends that libraries reach out into their community, discover what it is that their community really needs out of its library, because every library in the state's a little different, because every community is different. And then structure its resources and its programs and its classes so that it best suits the needs of the community it's supposedly serving. So we don't, for example, we don't have an awful lot of archived material at our library. We don't have a lot of historic documents. We don't have an awful lot of old photographs because the NAB Center does that, and they do it really well. So we don't need to do that. We don't need to take our space or our time or our funding to do that. We partner with the NAB Center, and we send people to the NAB Center, and we reference the NAB Center resources in order to make sure that they get the very best service they can possibly get. It would be silly for us to try and recreate that.
When you start to create a new service or program, I know you have a board that pretty much oversees everything you do.
Yes.
But do you look toward your funding sources before you do that to make sure that you're going to get funded for doing that?
Oh, absolutely. When we started the reader van service, we knew that we had grant funding for at least the first year and a half to 2 years, so we could pilot the program and see whether or not it was
That's
going to
from
work
the
the way
state,
we thought.
yeah.
Well, actually, those were from private grants.
Okay,
We got them from
okay.
PNC. The library writes over $200,000 in grants almost every year, in addition to the funding that the county and the state
So
provides.
any new programs you would start or have started, of course, you've not been there that long, so you probably don't recall.
6.5
Yeah, I
years.
guess it has been. Anyway,
And it's the same with,
but I mean, did you go to the county executive and say, look, we want to start this
Yes.
program, so we're going to get funded for it? And-
we did the same thing for Project Read. We said, this is a service, there is no adult literacy program on the Lower Shore, not just in Wicomico County, but the whole Lower Shore, there's nothing. And so we wanted to start the service. The United Way and the Henson Foundation gave us initial startup funding for the first 3 years. And we went to the executive and said, this is what we want to do, this is how we want to do it. And once we get to year 3, we need to start transitioning this program so it's sustainable. It needs to go out of grant funding and it needs to come into the operating budget of the library. Here's how we can do it, step by step by step. We try and do that for any sizable program especially. We always want to make sure they're
Is
sustainable.
that the prior county executive or this one?
That was this one, because that's only a 3-year program.
Why would something have to come out of a grant program when you're getting money from another source?
Because almost every grant only wants to do seed money. They want to help you pilot a program and get it started. They do not want to continue funding it beyond year 3 or 4 at the most.
I understand that, but you said you want to get it out of that program, but if you're getting funding.
No, I don't.
wait.
I wanted to get it out of grant funding. So Project Read started as a completely grant-funded program. In year 2, the grant funding reduced slightly, so we asked the county to increase the funding slightly. And it was a stair-step piece, so that by the time we got to year 4, it was completely inside of our operating budget and off of the grant money. And that's sort of the program, that's kind of the way we try and do some of these major programs.
Yeah, if you really look at it, your total funding has gone down. Your operating's flat. Your capital's gone down, so in a sense, the total budget for the library has been reduced.
Has been reduced.
Yeah, I was extremely surprised that you were flat funded on your operating, because I don't know if there are any other departments that have been flat funded.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but I'm not aware of that either. Our budget's increased $17 million in the last 2 years. And I would think that somehow or other, in some fashion, we could do something to raise this per capita rate that we're looking at in Wicomico County. So to get an idea exactly of what you're requesting, the increase that you were asking for out of what was funded, the $498,940, that's a $261,000 difference, is that correct, for local funding?
I'm sorry,
Well-
I'm trying to follow you.
Yeah, believe me, I had to do some numbers. It looked to me like what you were asking for from the prior year was a hundred and, oh boy, now I don't know how it came.
Okay.
From what I looked at, from what you were asking, your increase, the total, taking away what the state is giving you, it looked like
Okay.
there was a total of 761.43 requests for the county. And the 498,940 is what you received. So you're looking at that as a shortfall from the local request of 261,203 maybe?
Yes, yes, and then if you take the shortfall number and you run it, the shortfall number, actually, there's one more chart in your thing. Librarians love charts. I have to warn you, I'm sorry about that. This shows you where we were in 2006,
Yeah.
or 2008, excuse me. It shows you where we were last year in 2018 and where we are for this year's proposed budget in 2019. And it may be the easiest way to discuss the numbers. You can see that the state funding has increased over that time because the population has increased. And there's just a straight per capita, once it's run through that formula. The county funding, however, has not. I mean, last year and the 2008's number and 2018's number, 2018 number is less than 2008. The grant funding has gone up because we've been forced to write more grants. And fortunately for us, those grantees, those grantors are understanding and support the work that the library is doing in literacy and in education. And so we've been very successful in our grant writing efforts and have been able to do some incredible grant writing, including getting grants to help offset the expenses for the county to renovate the building, which was a grant we wrote and submitted on the county's behalf so that we could get that project done. And you can see the personnel costs, of course, have gone up. I mean, you need to pay your salaries, you need to pay your health care, state taxes, all of that's in there as well. But you can see this is an itemized list of some of the major categories of our budget. It's not broken down by accounts for the library, but it gives you an idea of where the money goes and how we're spending it, how we're allocating it.
Yeah, again, I just, I don't see the logic of flat funding from the prior year. It seems to be isolated only with the library itself, and I don't understand the logic to that. So we'll see. Right.
Agree with you.
Any other questions from anyone here?
As a percentage of your overall budget, I'm looking at yours here, which is the 1.8, which isn't what the county budgeted, but personnel as a percentage of that, how do you rank compared to other,
Other
libraries?
other
And
entities.
yeah,
It's a similar, our people are our biggest resource.
right.
And for most libraries, just like ours, the building is owned by the county, and so there's not some of the building expenses that you might see if we were an independent agency.
Sure.
The bookmobile is one of our biggest expenses. We cover all the expenses for operating that, and it runs about $30,000 a year, more or less. And then the next big thing is buying books and materials, and they really, that part of the budget really ought to be much larger. We're very fortunate to be in a consortium with the 7 other counties on the shore, and we share all of our resources with them, and they share with us. And so it extends the size of our collection, the number of books and all, to a scale that we could never hope to have on our own. So there's some things that don't show up on the budget that are still there, but overall personnel is usually running between 75 and 85% of an operating budget for a library.
Most
That's
libraries'
pretty standard,
budgets.
yeah.
Okay.
So Andrea, do you have in here anywhere, if I'm missing it, what it would cost for the 17% in health expenses?
That is in that fiscal 19 request that you're looking at, all those
I'm
bold
talking
numbers.
about the broken
Oh.
down number, just exactly how much would that be? Do you have an idea? You can get back with
You
us.
can get back.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I didn't know whether you had to have it written
really,
in there.
I will tell you that it is very close to 48,000.
Okay, so you'd say around 48. Okay,
Yes.
how about the 2% raise? Do you have any idea about how much that would be?
51,000.
51,000.
I did those numbers yesterday.
Pretty good. Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yes.
So we're looking at $100,000 somewhere in that neighborhood for,
Between the two.
take care of those two issues.
Yes,
I'll repeat, we just make a recommendation.
I understand, but I appreciate the fact that you're willing to discuss this,
Okay.
and so does my staff.
And we see the other things you have down here.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard, and that's why I questioned about your duplication of services and things. I have heard concerns about that from different sources.
I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, so anyway, you get accused of being the Grinch up here sometimes.
It's quite all right, Joe. I know you're not the Grinch. You're,
Yes, he is.
Thanks.
everybody has a role to play, right? No, it's good, because if you have that question, then
Yeah,
there's lots of other people that have it, and they should know.
Well, that's what they asked me, so,
Yeah,
okay.
And that's why I asked Ed, because I've been hearing it too.
yeah. No,
That's
we work
why
very
that-
hard not to.
That's why he's not challenging the polls, because his constituents trust him.
There you go. Ask the hard questions. It's a good thing.
Any other questions?
Good.
Questions or comments? No? Okay.
Thank you for your time this
Thank you.
morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it, thank you very much.
I'll give you the extra one in case somebody needs it. If you're, does Laura need one?
Yes, Laura would, yeah.
And actually, do you guys want, I'll let you have one.
Hello, Ray. Why don't you come on up? Yeah, we're doing pretty good here.
Morning, all.
Morning.
Well, you know, John Monar, Deputy Director.
Hey, John. You guys will get the same type of question.
Is that, what are they?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know IT was gonna be in here. But I pulled it out.
Keep it by my seat.
Well, do I need it?
Okay. The last item on the agenda, of course, is the IT department. If you gentlemen could state your names and your positions for the public, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm Ray Machichi, Director of IT for Wicomico County.
John Monar, Deputy Director of IT for Wicomico County.
What number?
15?
15.
Department 15, yes.
Going the wrong way. Thank you.
Ray, if you could just give us an overview of, what has been requested and what's been funded for your IT this year?
There's been some significant changes this year, and I think if I could explain upfront the purpose of them and go into the individual items.
All right.
What we're trying to do this year in the IT budget is to consolidate much of the county's expenses on technology. So you'll see increases in the number of computers being purchased. You'll see some funds being transferred from other departments' requests into the county IT department's request. And you'll see some in software as well. What we're trying to do, like I said, is to improve some of the accountability, some of the trackability, make sure that these resources are funded properly. And-
So, if I could interrupt,
Yes.
is this stuff that would have in other years been in, let's say, finances
Yes.
budget?
Yes.
It's just all being consolidated here under your budget? So there
Correct.
should be a corresponding decrease. I mean, and I guess that's not really necessarily your
Correct.
question. It should be a corresponding decrease in, let's say, finance or roads, and yours increases because you're consolidating computers under, or,
Right.
okay,
Right,
IT under
right.
yours.
And we'll go through some of those specifics.
Okay,
Okay? We're also looking to as the county moves forward with some of the new technologies, such as voice over internet, the telephone system improvements and so on, we also have some infrastructure improvements we have to make. And you'll see some of that funding in here as well. Okay? So if I could I'll go through some of the, John, do you want me to go through everything or just go through the major changes?
Major.
Okay, all right. And the large expenses.
Yes.
Sure. In the first one that's a large expense you'll see is under the computer software support. Last year, we were down around 230,000, and that funded the county's 911, sheriff's office, records management system, the mobile data for the police cars, and the base background for mobile data to the fire apparatus. This year, that number is increasing. Last year, it was around 148,000. This year, we're going up to 156. The primary reason for that is we've increased a few vehicles. Every vehicle we increase, every user we add increases our annual support. Plus, there's approximately a 5% per year increase by the vendor. If everything was static, we would get a 5% increase in their funding, in that cost. That is through Superion, which used to be SunGuard, OSSI, and that's the increase there. Our disaster recovery software is a pretty consistent $15,000. Here's one of the, Mark, here's one of the changes you mentioned. The Munis funding is being moved out of finance and moved into IT. So there's a $269,000 per year fee that we pay for Munis every year.
And you saying that's being moved from finance?
That should be moved from finance or wherever they funded it last year into my department. That was, all I know, it wasn't in my department last year,
So
and we're moving it into
I guess,
mine.
Wayne, we'll see a deduction in that department, right?
I can't go off the top of my head, Joe.
Okay.
What we were trying to do was take the software, hardware costs and consolidate them in one place for two reasons. Number one, so that we were putting it through a protocol where we weren't buying software and hardware that wouldn't communicate with other software and hardware in the county. But second, so that we could isolate what those total costs are for the county.
Okay.
So we may have grabbed pieces out of different departments and moved it in. Munis software, I think, was in finance. So
Right.
Yeah.
It was actually spread between three departments.
Mr. President, if I may, sorry.
Could you grab a mic, Wayne?
No, he-
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean,
No, because I had a question also.
yeah, no,
Come on up.
Yeah, come on.
I do see that finance's computer software support was from 176 last year
Right.
to
Right.
$7,400 this year, so.
And there's an HR component and a planning and zoning component also.
Mr. President, the auditors actually did a study on that we released to you. It was some time ago, you may not recall, but we determined that last year, 43% of the computer and software expenses in the entire county were in the IT department. This year, that has increased to 87%. We agree, we've had some meetings with Ray and his people, and we agree that centralizing this sort of thing is a very good idea. The only other thing we pointed out was that there was a 19% increase overall in software and hardware expenses countywide, and I believe is that we're getting new servers.
We are getting new servers and we're
that counts for
replacing.
that, so we did look at that pretty thoroughly, and we're in agreement with what they're trying to do here.
And I'll go over some of those details as well.
Wayne, you did a really great job in the last couple of years of deciding to separate out costs and to make other costs more inclusive among the individual departments, I believe mostly in health costs,
Right.
et cetera.
Right.
To me, when you put the munis expenses, for lack of better words, into the IT department, it sort of gives the impression that IT is using that for their department. Would those funding numbers be better off if they were in like general services, or if they were actually? I don't understand why they weren't itemized to the individual department that has the most use for that product.
What I was trying to do with that, John, I mean, that's a good question. What I was trying to do there was, I was trying to, in the finance system, preclude someone from buying something that was not compatible or may not be the best product, so that when they went through the purchase process, they would not have the budgetary authority to proceed further, that it would have to kick over to Ray. So I think to simplify it for the whole county with all the moving parts we have, I felt that it was just better to say, look, if it's hardware, software, I'm gonna put that budget appropriation to the extent I can. There's some very specialized stuff, for instance, at the Civic Center and in tourism, where it's very unique. It's a very unique operating system, and I really don't want to burden Ray with having to spin through that. But we have, computers that won't talk to one another because people have purchased wrong products. So I was putting one last safeguard in place by saying, you want to buy it, the money's over here, and you prove to Ray that you should buy it.
Okay.
So that's the reason. From an accounting standpoint, yeah, I like seeing departments, I like you being able to see a department and say, that's the all-in cost of running that department. So if they've bought software, or they're the user department with software, hardware.
Right.
I'd like people to be able to say, well, the real cost of running that department is X. We could probably produce reports that would give you that. But the reason I suggested that we consolidate this in IT's budget was just to really safeguard ourselves against buying the wrong stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to address that too, and I understand what you're trying to do, but couldn't you have done a sign-off situation with Ray about any computer products being, any IT stuff being bought from any department to save from having to do that?
We did try that, and what happened was that people were still buying things without going through the IT department.
Only works if it's followed.
Yeah, so.
Whether they would do it through a grant or
So
something.
I just reached a point, Joe, where I said, okay, I'm gonna control it in a different way. I'm not gonna give you the money
Well,
to buy
I
it.
can surely see that.
Yeah.
And, okay.
What about like the fuel ring technology and everything? Is that now included?
No, that's, right now, that's still under the
Okay.
gross.
That's a specialized.
Okay.
Now,
burden.
one of the reasons I've been advocating for this for a while myself has been that it also improves the visibility of what we're expending on software. Software is a major expense. The annual support that we pay for this software is, as you can see, is a major expense. And to spread it around multiple departments, I think minimizes that exposure of those expenses to the county. It makes it harder to define those. I also, from an administrative position, these invoices all come in with one number. We would have to go through and separate out a $269,000 one-time fee and say, okay, now we got to calculate how many people. Do you do it by people? Do you do it by the amount of funding in their budgets? There's a whole, what would be the calculations to do that? So I think for simplicity and visibility on the costs for these things, I've always thought this was the right way to go.
I think I agree with you. My big concern right now is this first year, if you're pulling figures out of other departments, are they pulling the right amount of figures out so the
Right.
budgets in these other departments aren't being boosted to some extent?
That's a good point. We don't know really how much they're being cut or how much they're being funded. Yes.
Well, I believe
I'm
that.
not saying that you're,
No,
I mean, you're getting
no.
what you need, but is
No, I
it
understand.
being reflected out of the other departments?
I believe that in every case that we've done this here, it actually states what's being removed from the other departments.
Well, we know that. We know it states what's being removed. Is too much being removed or not enough? I guess
Okay.
that's what,
Okay.
How would we
I
know?
understand.
How would we really know that?
Okay.
Thank
That's
you.
it, Val?
Thank you. Yeah.
continue?
Thanks.
Okay. There's a $12,000, again, this $12,000 800 number is out, it's a slight increase this year. We've had to, this is for our firewalls that expose the county to the internet. For redundancy, we have spread multiple firewalls throughout the county so that in the event of network outages or issues at a specific site, that we don't lose all of our internet access, because so much of our business today is done on the internet directly. And that's gone up a little bit. You'll see the next major expense we have is the Microsoft Office 365. That's your Exchange, your online version of email. We've increased the number of users. We have steadily seen an increase in the population in the county. And even without an increase in population, the number of users that previously did not require an email address, we've had to give those to those people. So we've increased this year by 500 last year, we've gone up to 530. Situations such as the state of Maryland, when you sign up for a Meters NCIC account, now has a security protocol that requires an email be sent to that user with a verification code every single time they log into the system. So we had individuals in corrections and the sheriff's office who did not previously have email addresses who now have to. So we've had to increase that number. We have begun implementing, as a component of that, a little further down, the $8,850, Microsoft Office OneDrive. It is a cloud-based data storage technology, similar to Google Drive or any of that, but the advantage to us in this situation is the county controls it. We have, it's like any other server, or the user accesses their data, stores their data, and if they should happen to leave the employee of the county or fail to take care of it, the county has access to that data and has the ability to back it up through our cloud manager. We also have the ability to, just like any other system, disable access to data from that system. In the past, that hadn't been the case. Individuals were creating their own personal Google accounts and so on. We've curtailed that. Under our maintenance contracts, these are fairly ongoing. Our time clock system is $7,700 a year. Our generator, we put in $1,000 a year for a maintenance contract. The county website costs us $10,800 per year for the hosted site that we run.
Hotline, is the hotline on there? Is that on there?
My hotline.
The hotline on your list? Employee hotline.
Employee hotline.
No, it's not. Do we pay for that? Is that a service that we pay for? Because that's a separate, while we post it on the website, it's not a component of the website. I don't believe it.
I don't recall where that's budgeted, Joe. I can find that for you.
I'm sure, is it ours?
It's in the executive's budget.
The executive. Okay, all right. You didn't want to volunteer that, did you?
Well, it is an executive's budget. I tried to get rid of it and send it in.
That's a good place for it. Good place for it. Good. Sorry about that.
The next major expense is, now falls under the computer equipment, less than $5,000. You'll see we requested 50 new computers. At this time, Wicomico County operates around 600 computers. Usually, I think it's a little more than that, actually. Of the 600 computers that we operate, 132 are running Windows 7. We've done an analysis of them, and about 32 of them can be upgraded, physically upgraded, using just software and some minor components. The remainder are old technology, older, slower machines, and really do require replacement. and most of them are in excess of 7 years old. What we like to do is we put in a request for the 50 computers. And then as other departments submitted requests for computers for next year, the finance office evaluated them and said, okay, we'll just take those away. If they don't exceed, if our total number never exceeds 50, then we'll just leave the 50 in the IT department. And we just won't ask for other computers for other departments. With one exception, which was the 911 center, who were asking for some advanced computers that were not included in my number. Okay? So that's where that 50,000. Our average cost for a PC with a monitor, the new versions, is about $1,000 per unit, and we're asking for 50 this year. We're going to ask for 50 next year, and that'll get rid of our Windows 7. The reason being is that in 2020, Windows 7 is no longer supported in any form or fashion by Microsoft. In 2023, because this will continue on after that, Windows 8.1 will no longer be supported by Microsoft, so we are going to have to begin the next phase of this in the following year after 2020.
How many computers will that affect?
That will probably affect another 150 computers.
What happens with the old computers?
In general, we try to upgrade them. In these particular cases, we're not going to be able to upgrade them. So we will probably either put them out for auction.
Less the hard drive.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We always destroy the hard drives. But we will dispose of them in the typical fashion, and when we do anything that's a usable machine, we'll put it out with an auction. If it's not a usable machine, which we typically, as you can see, we've got some really old ones, we typically recycle them until they no longer function. Under software, less than $5,000, the $21,000 item, right now the county operates roughly 300 video surveillance cameras throughout the county, mostly in corrections, but we have them in 7 other facilities. What we would like to do is consolidate the cost of those annual licenses, which are, actually they're every other year license, of $70 per camera, and consolidate them under the IT department. Since we control all the cameras, we manage the entire system, we felt it would be beneficial to the county to centralize that expenditure as well.
Do you monitor all those cameras, or how does that work?
We manage them.
You
We don't
manage
monitor them. Each department monitors them themselves. Excuse me. But we have a staff member who's probably close to 30% of his time is spent managing, monitoring, upgrading the cameras and systems as we expand them and maintain them.
I mean, so they're kind of separated out by department, so corrections kind of stays with corrections. I mean, there's no kind of overall thing where you could, say,
Well,
this is
like
what's
this
going on.
facility here, all
Yeah.
the cameras in this facility are all under my control.
Okay.
Each department has access to certain cameras within their organization. We manage it's all one central system with the right security. Any one individual could potentially see all cameras in the county, but we manage it by department and by need, what cameras individuals can see and monitor. And with very limited availability, some people actually have the ability to record and output, like our security personnel at the corrections office can do that.
Are you having problems with people buying hardware that's not matching up to these? Or
To this? No,
Yeah.
not
So
to this.
why are we separating that?
Again, we get one invoice from the vendor to separate it out and attempt to get all the different departments to fund the correct amount each year.
So you're going to be charging the departments?
Well,
for
if
what
they
you've
had
done.
money in their accounts prior to this, they should be taking that out of this $21,000.
No, but what I'm saying, I guess, Wayne, that we're going again, where you're talking about truth in funding for a department, so we're getting a little farther away from that each time we do this. This is, I mean, you went with the healthcare, like John said a few minutes ago, to each department. I understood why you do that, because it's truth in funding for
Yeah,
each
'cause-
department, so, but you're doing this, and that's kind of taking the truth in funding away from.
Well, there's a little bit of a difference, because with healthcare, there's only one person who can really negotiate and buy healthcare in the county, and that would be the HR director. But we have multiple people in the county who could, in fact, if they wanted to, go out and buy a security camera.
Yeah, but he said you
I'm not
don't,
saying
he's
you
not
will.
having that problem with this, yeah.
Not having the problem currently, but you don't
We did.
want,
Yeah.
but you don't want a construct where you could have that problem.
We also want to be able to have central management control over the whole system. We
Yeah,
don't
the-
want to end
the-
up having an individual.
From a security standpoint, particularly with regard to corrections, you know, I want the management of that camera system to be under the control of a department that is separated from the corrections department, because we get FOIA'd all the time for, you know, that video, and we want to be able to say, now, the corrections department does not manage that equipment. That equipment is managed by our IT department. It's a,
Could funds be transferred or billed back to the departments that are
yeah,
using this?
we could do some
That would show
accounting.
more of what
Yeah.
our actual budget cost is for a department? Because this really kind of convolutes what budget costs are for departments.
We could do that. I mean, I think we could do that with I think we could do that with these costs, Joe. I don't think that would take a lot of analytical time.
I mean, if you think it's important, maybe it's not important, but it just seems to me like you're not showing the true cost of what a department operates under when part of the systems are being paid for out of another department, and that's.
I understand your point. And I understand council wanting to be fully aware of, okay, we've transferred this cost that was traditionally accounted for in your departmental budget to another department. You want to be assured that there has been an appropriate reduction in that sending department's budget. And I understand that. I can do that analysis for you, or I can get it done. I can do that for you.
I mean, does the rest of council feel that way?
I know what you're saying, Joe.
Yeah,
I would.
I'd be the lone wolf out here, but.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, it gets to the, like you're saying, to the two different functions of a budget, you know, kind of one is, you know, again, you have corrections that uses technology, so is it under technology, under corrections? I mean, it's good to, depending on how you look at it, you know, one way you want to know what corrections is doing for everything, but then you also sometimes want to separate it out to have some control of technology. So I think looking at it both ways makes a lot of sense. So, you know, from management's perspective, I understand what you're saying, but Joe's perspective for pure transparency.
Understand.
All right, yeah, you know,
Understand.
finance costs this much, even though, you know,
I think we can
5% of
produce
that's
that for you.
technology.
I think we can produce that for you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's on the same line. How many employees is in your department? I don't know if you skipped that or not.
How many employees in my department?
Yes.
Currently, it's myself and 5.
I thought I counted 9 positions in there.
We have a unfilled technician position that we've been unable to fill, and we have a administrative assistant who is, we were going to hire last year, but there was a mix-up with the funding. We originally were going to try to do this in last year's budget, but it didn't go through council, so it was deferred until next year. And that person is going to be responsible for managing all of these
You have
contracts.
one more.
I have one more that will be coming.
Why couldn't you fill the first one you mentioned? the tech
I
position?
have had 3 advertisements for the job, and I've had almost.
Just couldn't get somebody you knew?
Could not get someone, or the few that were qualified wanted twice the salary we were
So
offering.
you allotted 9 positions. How many
not-
departments have their, well, I counted 9, I thought when I went through here.
It should
but
only
anyway.
be, including myself, it should only
Should
be
be, right?
Eight.
6 of us right now,
6.
and then 2
Right,
vacancies.
Yeah.
altogether, yes.
So I'm just wondering, what other departments have their own IT person?
Should not be in.
Okay.
I know that there is a person with a data tech title in the 911 center, Their position is really for running reports and creating data for the 911 center, but there are no other organizations that are authorized to do any work on any computers
So
in the
there,
county.
no departments have their own IT?
Correct.
I don't know if that was in the past or not, but I agree with you.
Right.
Everything should fall under your department.
It's a source of frustration for some, but
Oh, I bet.
But we do control access. We're the only group that has any administrative rights to any computers in the county.
Thank you for that information.
Okay. All right, moving on. Under, again, the final one under capital software under $5,000. I mentioned the 32 computers that we could upgrade out of the 132. This is the line item, $4,000 is for the Windows 10 upgrade software. And a few lines above that, you'll see another line for $4,800. It's for replacement hard drives to run that software. So we'll purchase hard drives and software for the machines, load those drives, and then upgrade individual PCs as we get our hands on. That expedites the process, and it gives us good functioning machines in the end. The wear parts are all replaced now. Moving down, here we go, are into some of these transfers of accounts. State's attorney transfer let's go back up one. County council had requested a copy of Roxio.
Yes.
It's being transferred to the IT department for purchase. The state's attorney's office has an application called Judicial Dialogue, which is a state interface for the courts. They're looking for some upgrades and modifications to that for $7,000. We're going to move that into IT. The sheriff's office is looking to purchase Microsoft Office 2016 to upgrade a number of the machines in their facility that are not to that spec. They've moved that value into our department. Same thing with Windows 10. The next line item for $604 is to, again, move software costs from the sheriff's office to IT. $300 is for, I believe, a couple of copies of Adobe Acrobat for Public Works. And then the $2,500 is for the engineering department, AutoCAD, some sign design software, and so on. So those are consolidations of software expenditures that they're going to move into my department. One of the other things that we've encountered over the years that we're hoping to try to gain control of is quite often software is purchased without the knowledge of the department purchasing the software that there's an annual maintenance cost associated with it. We understand that with everything we buy because that's what we do. We find that if you have a law enforcement organization that buys a piece of software, they're hit next year by a surprise, not understanding that they had an annual expense that came along with that the following year. So we know that, we know to budget for that every year beyond. And you may have even seen some of those. And that's our request for the software under $5,000.
Ray, why do you have to replace the 132 PCs? You can't just upgrade the software? I'm assuming if they're on Windows 7, they're old.
We evaluated them, and of the 132, we can do 32. 100 of them are either their processors are so old that Windows 10 wouldn't operate properly on them. They require extensive upgrades.
Right.
Plus hard drives. You'd basically be replacing everything except for the chassis.
Yeah.
And many of these machines are so old that by the time you do the upgrade, you make the replacements, 6 months later they crash, have a power failure or something, and we end up having to replace it anyhow.
I've just learned how to use this thing.
So quite a number of them, like I said, John, are probably in excess of 6 or 7 years old. These are not new machines by any stretch. We've stretched them quite a bit. Okay?
I was surprised to see we still had computers running Windows 7.
Yeah. Oh, we still have computers running Windows 8.
Less, yeah.
Yes. And that's a source you'll see that. You should have seen a request in the sheriff's office for replacement mobile data terminals. That's separate and apart from mine. That's something he's doing separate and apart, because they have a specific need for their vehicle costs to be upgraded. They've got a large number that need to be replaced.
But that'll be separate from you.
That will be separate
You'll be
from me.
buying those.
Right.
Why are we putting that under the same umbrella?
I'm not sure. The sheriff's office decided to put that in there. They wanted that in their budget. I don't know whether they qualify it under vehicle expenses. I don't know what they do.
That's a question.
We identified the need to them. Okay? We can transfer it in if we want to be consistent. My department will be setting them up and installing them anyhow, so whether we fund them or not becomes just a matter of budget. Building improvements, less than $5,000.
And what's that for?
Well, rewiring of buildings,
I did see that.
network wiring. The roads division and solid waste are both, I'll call it haphazard wiring. Over the years, as an individual office was moved, a general services or a maintenance technician would pull a piece of wire from somewhere to somewhere, and it looks like pretty much of a rat's nest. We're looking to move to voice over IP data networks. We've got video surveillance systems running over these networks, and they are totally inadequate. They hurt performance. A voice over internet system wouldn't even work on some of these networks the way they're wired. So we really do have to, if we're going to progress with these technologies throughout the county, we have to make this change. Parks Division, you'll see it's a smaller number because there's fewer people. The Tourism Office, same kind of a thing. Small office, smaller number, about $2,400. We figured around $200 per run per person, and we've got about 10 runs that we would be making in each of those facilities. Capital computer software. No, I think I jumped the page. Computer equipment, capital computer equipment. The file servers and print server, it's one device, file and print server, that operates the government office building and the civics and the public safety complex, which includes the sheriff's office, emergency services, and corrections. Those two servers are probably in excess of 7 to 8 years old now. We have stretched them as far as we can stretch them, and they need to be replaced. With the demands on data, the types of data we're storing, the absolute volume of data we're storing these days, we'd like to replace those. Those particular machines are roughly $16,000 each due to the volume of data and the large size of the drive space we need to put in them, and we'd like to buy 2 of those. In the 911 center, you'll see 2 items for $22,000 each. Those are the actual machines that run the dispatch and the sheriff's records management systems. They are advanced machines. They run multiple systems, not just the sheriff's or the 911 center. We run, basically this machine will mimic the operation of 5 servers. We virtualize on those. So rather than buy 5 individual servers, we buy 1 robust server, or 2 in this case, and we will run 5 servers on each one of those virtually. It makes management much cleaner for us. It also reduces our hardware expenses. Those 2 servers are in excess of 6 years old. They're out of warranty. We really do need to upgrade those as well. What we plan to do in this particular case, because these are advanced servers that have great capabilities, we're going to take the 2 existing that we're replacing, we're going to reallocate those, we're going to remove all the data obviously off of them, and we're going to reallocate those 2 servers to 2 other areas that are less demanding for their data services, which would be the Roads Division and the Civic Center. We're going to replace the aging servers at those facilities with these two that are not quite as old as the others, but by the time we clean them up, load them with the new version of software, they'll act and perform as new. So they're not going to go to waste. And then the two servers that are at the Civic Center and Roads Division, we're going to retire. We'll put those out, we'll wipe them of data, and we will put them out for auction or however we want to dispose of them. The next line item is the replacement of the PCs for the 911 dispatch area. These were not slated under our Windows 7 upgrade. These are, in fact, these are Windows 8.1 machines. They are 5 years old each, all out of warranty. They run 24/7, 365 days a year, and they cannot, we need them to be operational. So we need to replace them with new current technology, and that is $18,040. And that'll replace every computer in the 911 center communications room. And then finally, under capital software, the servers that we're going to be replacing and repurposing from the Civic Center and the 911 center out to the Roads Division, which actually will serve solid waste, roads, and parks, because they're on one campus now. Logically, we need to replace the operating systems, the client licenses, and one of those servers runs Microsoft Office SQL to run the Fuel Master system. We need to upgrade all those. So that $7,200 per server for all of the software involved for upgrading those two servers. And that is the major changes.
Wayne, when we were talking
Yes,
about
sir.
the budget and how it's going to affect, different departments, did you take into account for enterprise, the enterprise departments, the enterprise funds, how you were going to do that?
Enterprises would get charged for any expenditure out of the general fund. We would charge them for that.
So that they would be charged for the
Yeah.
IT department?
Yeah, it really is somewhat disturbing that there's so many expenses, especially capital expenses, that are being transferred out of other departments to raise, and that this may be an ongoing procedure, policy year after year after year. Because, if you look here, you have a transfer of $7,000 from the state's attorney's office. We just met with the state's attorney. It's going to take me to try to figure out what they're doing on their capital or whatever. I guess that's where it says here, software, whatever, it's a reduction of $7,000, and we're seeing 100% reduction in a lot of their expenses. We don't know if that was a one-time only cost where they had $7,000 on a computer last year and not this year. We have to do a lot of cross-referencing to know where the money's really going.
Yeah, I think there are two things, John. One is, most of the capital is going to be one time, and there would be a difference between what I would call an ongoing software expense, an annual licensing fee that had been in the budget for a department for a number of years and now is getting moved over to raise. A lot of what we're doing here has to do with new requests. So a new request wouldn't necessarily mean that that department's budget should be reduced this year. If they had said, hey, we've got this emerging need and we need to buy X, Y, or Z, that has to be budgeted for. So you wouldn't look at last year's budget and say, well, last year's budget ought to be reduced because that's a new need. But I understand what you're saying. And I'll do my best to unravel that for you so that you've got your bearings on that. I understand what you're asking.
Yeah. If I wanted to know,
Yeah.
if the state's, well, I guess if the state's attorney's office came in here next year and said they wanted $15,000 for a new computer-based system, they wouldn't even have to do that because it would be in his budget.
Through him, because when they met with us, if they justified it to us, and Ray was, and Ray, the first thing I do is ask Ray, hey, does this make sense? Is this a logical software purchase or hardware purchase? When he says yes, and essentially justifies it, that's when we embed it in his budget this year. So it goes through that process, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able
I'll
to go
try
back.
to do that for you.
I wouldn't be able, we wouldn't be able to go back to the state's attorney's office and go, why do you want this? You just did it 3 years ago.
Right.
Because we wouldn't know.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
And one of the other things, John, I think, this issue with the 132 Windows 7 PCs is part of the problem. We have departments who over the years have purchased PCs. They purchase replacement PCs. Every year we purchase replacement PCs, but they're not necessarily replacing the old, out-of-date, unsupportable PCs, because that's not what they're focused on. They're trying to replace a PC maybe for an engineer, or for a finance officer, or for someone who's got something more advanced. Meanwhile, sitting over here in the corner, doing their job every day and not complaining about it, you've got someone who's running a Windows 7 PC, maybe an administrative assistant, maybe something like that. Now we've got machines that will no longer be supported, that we can't do anything with, that if they should happen to fail, now we've got a total, we've got to do something in a hurry and not do it in a logically organized manner to replace.
Which makes perfect sense, but I wouldn't want to mix up the budgeting process from the process we have on policies, in-house policies, and tracking procedures. Yeah, I think that if they order 13, in other words, all the computers that are being ordered now, you should know that, and you should say, don't forget, we have those 3 computers that are still in finance, that we know are at least 5 years old and they're gonna have to be, pulled out within the next year at the most. I wouldn't have any problem if IT was in charge of overseeing, the replacement of all the computers,
Right.
but as a policy, but as a budgetary process, I think it should still be within that department. And you guys would just have to have, you have to have a system in place where you knew when those purchases were made and when it needs to be upgraded. Maybe, in a departmental meeting, you go, hey, guys, don't forget, you guys all bought these computers in 2006, and you're gonna have to replace them sometime.
You're also gonna have to set up a billing account.
Well, I don't know if there's a mechanism within units that we could be
Yeah,
able
we
to do
can,
that still.
yeah,
And within my department, but still make it accountable to
Yeah.
other departments.
we can sit and talk about that. It's, again, technology is moving so rapidly and has become so expensive that you really want to be sure that your experts are passing judgment on, this is the technology that we should be buying.
Sure.
So, that was the genesis of why I did what I did. I do understand, of course, you saying, well, wait a minute, I'm not, stuff's moving around and I need to be sure that I understand how things move around. And
Sure.
I can do some analysis work for you
Yeah.
on that.
Okay. Any other questions for IT?
I have one question.
Yes.
You were talking about how technology is changing really fast. For the public safety complex, you've got that the internet services going to be
Oh, I'm sorry.
upgraded to the Comcast.
Yes.
Can you explain what that is?
Comcast.
Okay.
All right, I apologize for that.
Word
That
spell.
was a, yeah, I like Comcast. That's actually a,
Compact?
It says
Comcast.
yeah, it's
that's
just a
actually,
typo.
believe it or not, that's actually, I think, a state system.
Oh.
called But, we've had to make an adjustment to that. I must have skipped over that page.
It's page 109 on your text printout.
We ran into a situation this year, that we were unaware of with Comcast. All of the lines that run into the public safety complex, all the different, we've got 4 different internet services that come in, some for the sheriff's office, some for 911, some for corrections, and some for the circuit court, which we don't manage, but it's just an internet line that comes in. What we discovered through an accident by somebody working on a line out there is all of those come in on one line and then split at the head of the building where they come in. So at one moment, we had every circuit in the public safety complex go dead because the technician was working on the pillar out in front of the building. So what we've done is we have contracted with the state of Maryland through Network Maryland to provide an alternative route internet service at that facility. Where in the budget, I had put in a funding for Comcast, that actually changes to the state of Maryland. We were also upgrading the services at, where did I put that? I apologize, I had it on my, but here it is, here it is. So Laura, the first line for 6250, that's actually the state of Maryland internet services through DPSCS. The $10,270, that is our fiber optic cable that runs between the government office building and the public safety complex through the state of Maryland. And then the $6,500 is what we pay Comcast annually for the 3 internet services that we fund to interconnect the internet to the public safety complex and to interconnect all of the facilities over on Owens Branch Road into the county network. Those are through Comcast. All that's through Comcast, these 3 services.
So the state of Maryland is providing the internet service?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's through?
Through Network Maryland.
Network Maryland.
That's the 6250. Yes, I had originally written Comcast, you're right. But that is now,
Is
what-
that-
the state of Maryland do it.
Do we get it at a reduced rate since we're going through the state of Maryland?
That is actually, yes, we get, it's a much more competitive rate for what we get out of them. Where at Comcast, you get a service, say you get a 250 megabyte service from Comcast, it's only 250 megabytes one way. Upload speeds are drastically reduced. In our particular scenario, because of the mobile data terminals and all the work we do, putting data out to the state, we actually need what's called a synchronous system. So that soft system through Comcast was prohibitively expensive for the state. Funds it for about twice what we pay for a standard Comcast.
So on that,
Yes.
just maybe think of it, we're moving the sheriff's department down Naylor Mill Road.
Yes.
So is it less expensive now because the sheriff's department and the public safety, the corrections facility is right next to each other? Is that gonna be more of a cost because now they're gonna be separated?
They're gonna have to have their own, they're gonna have, to be done properly, they would have their own internet service at that facility.
So that's gonna be an
That's gonna be an
additional,
expense.
okay,
There would also have to be fiber
between the two.
the existing complex and the new sheriff's complex.
So that'll be an added expense too.
I would think,
Okay.
that should be, I would have thought that would have been identified. Anything else?
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Wayne. I don't follow that book for the most part. I usually follow the PDF files.
Yep.
And is there any way in the world that like the next year budget detail report and the analysis, the final analysis, any of that can be combined? Because I go to the final analysis to look for the 217, 18, and 19, and yet it doesn't give the itemization that you get on the budget detail report. But I don't know how it is, because they're both in munis. And in the workbooks, are both of those, are they like the same file and they've just separated them for us in the PDF? 'Cause it seems like I always have to keep going back and forth.
They just pull it up. What they do is they just pull it out of Munis into a summary file and then put it into that. Let me talk to Dawn about that. If you can, talk with Laura. Laura and I
Yeah,
could talk with Dawn, and we could determine whether or not we could produce something that, that detailed report still needs to be produced, because those are the actual munis details, but we may be able to make it easier for you to track it, because I think that's what you're asking me.
Yeah, I'm looking for 17, 18, 19 comparison with the detailed report. Because right now I have to go from one to the other. Otherwise, I go to the detailed report and I say, okay, it's 23,000 for this.
Yeah, let me
And
ask.
I'm saying, well, what was it last year? Then
I
have
think
to
there is a way to do it.
Yeah,
There's
let-
just a little button that just hit print text, and you can do that, I
Yeah.
believe, for the comparison, but we would have to double check.
Yeah, let me double check with Dawn, understand what you're looking for.
Yeah, there's no comparison in these books like that. I mean, it's.
Understand what you're looking for.
Okay, thanks.
We actually did, I'm just thinking back, I asked each department to do a 3-year actual spending report by line item. And I could probably get that for you too. And it was in detail. So I'll talk to Dawn about it.
Okay.
I understand what you need.
Thanks.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You want to talk about the library now, or do you want to look at that?
No, I mean, no, we can talk about it.
The question is, how come it's flat funded and most of the other departments aren't? And is there duplication of services that you think's going on?
I
That can be
can't-
eliminated, to boost your funding for other things, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't done an exhaustive analysis of that, Joe, but
I know there was some concern among some people that there were. That's why I
you know,
asked that question.
we have adult education at Warwick, we have adult education, at the schools, we have adult education,
Do we have it at
at the
schools?
libraries. So, they're adult even, and we're talking about, for instance, let's talk about pre-K. We're talking about universal pre-K, and yet we have Andrea talking about a program that they're running where they're taking a pre-K learning module around to providers of essentially what's pre-K. It's daycare. So,
She gave you facts and statistics.
yeah, so
That's why I brought that up.
So what I'm saying, and I don't have any conclusions because I haven't analyzed it, but what I'm saying is that we have a number of educational components out there, all of which we're funding, and we don't get into the details of how they budget. The Board of Education comes to us and they've developed a budget, and we're a granting agency. We haven't been involved in the development of their budget and said, yeah, that's a good idea or a bad idea. Warwick develops their own budget. The library develops its own budget. And the question in my mind is, have we stood back and have we looked at all these educational components and said, hey, wait a minute, is there duplication here? Are there efficiencies here? And, I think when we're talking about increasing funding, and we're talking about increasing funding in each one of those entities, then I think we ought to be, we should have done some level of analysis to determine, well, are we duplicating? If we're supplementing, why are we supplementing? Is that need met in a different way? It's been nagging at, in the back of my mind, that is the county being as efficient as it can be in that regard?
And you say we're increasing funding in all those departments, but we're not in the library. That's flat
Correct.
funded, that's flat funded, so
Correct,
I guess,
correct.
is that why? Is that why?
I'm not prepared to have that discussion at this
So I didn't know whether to say duplicating services or complementing or overlapping. But I think when you're talking about granting funds, it's probably duplicating in some way.
I can't say for certain that it's duplication, Larry, but I do think that it warrants us taking a look at. And that's something that, going into this next operating year, that's something that I would really like to delve into. And I'd like to talk to Andrea. I'd like to talk to Dr. Hanlon,
Right.
to Dr. Hoy, and say, hey, these are all the differing programs out there, some of which seem to be trying to accomplish the same thing. And are we all on the same page with this, or are we operating somewhat independently? it's just a question in my mind.
I would like to see all parties that have a vested interest
Right.
come together
Right.
and make sure that they're not overlapping
Exactly.
services.
Well, I mean, and I think there is some, I mean, I think not at the county government level, but I know that, you know, the library and Warwick has some services in the library, you know, they do
Right.
some of their adult basic education. I think
We also
they
got
pay the.
county council.
Yeah, Tri-County, you know, job centers,
Yeah.
job
Yes.
search, you know, it's just,
It all
it
gets
seems,
intertwined.
you know,
Yeah.
is it effective to have it the way it is, or is it more effective and efficient to consolidate it in some fashion? And I can't answer that right now, because I haven't really sat and spun through it, but I think the county should do that.
It makes me feel like we're throwing money in the wind.
That's why I was asking her about
Yeah.
whether or not there was any type of state mandate attached to what the program
Right.
she was doing.
Right.
I mean, you of course see
And that was a
what
good question.
joke and interpretation is the duplication of services. I don't know if that's something that the state is saying, well, you know, we're giving you state funding. We need you to, you know, we need to expand on your job, workforce development programs.
Yep.
Things like that. I'm not
Yep.
quite sure that that might not be something that's requested.
Yeah.
To try to untie it, Wayne, I mean, I was reading a publication from Salisbury University where one of their professors in social work got a grant for opioid addiction through AmeriCorps. And it's, you know, I don't think you're ever gonna find a streamlined one road that
Same
addresses
thing.
each
I
one.
would just like to be, I'd like to have a better handle on it, I guess.
I
is
know
what
what
I'm
you're saying. I agree.
Because I can't tell you with certainty that, no, there isn't any duplication, that, you know, there aren't efficiencies. I can't say that right now, and I'd like to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that's disturbing, she said that, you know, when she started a new program, she brought it to the county executive and he approved of it.
I
Well,
can't,
I mean, without him sitting here and asking
I don't
him.
know whether that happened or not,
But,
Joe.
you know, if they're starting new programs and the county executive or whoever is approving it and then not following up on the funding, it's kind of tough.
No,
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things that, again, just to circle back on another topic, I'm always very careful when we're launching a new grant-funded
Oh, yeah. I know. We went through that.
apparatus or project, because
We gotta
when and
continue
if
to pay
that
for it.
grant funding dries up, it becomes a matter of whether it's still affordable because of the other competing needs that we have in the county.
Substantial.
So, you know, that's always, when a department head comes to me and says, hey, I've got this grant and it'll do this for us, you know, the first question is, okay, well, are you prepared to let that go if the grant doesn't come through next year? It's the first question.
Especially if it has employees involved.
Because if it's intended to be a recurring program, if it's extended to last any more than 1 year, you have to ask that question. Because you don't want to start a continuum program and not be certain that you have a fairly good handle on the multi-year
Like she
revenue.
said, it was a seed, most of those grants are
Yeah,
seed programs.
I understand
to
that.
get something started.
I understand that.
Well, and, I mean, getting away from the grant program a little bit, it's just there seems to be a little bit, I guess I'll say inconsistency, you know, that we have, you know, Warwick, you know, that's basically getting funded for a 5% pay increase. I think county employees are only getting 2%, is that right? Is that what's in the budget? 2% for county employee pay increase this year?
2% COLA for the county.
You know, and then, you know, which wasn't even in their initial budget ask, it just kind of came out of the blue for some reason. And then, you know, then the county, or then the library doesn't, you know, get any extra money for any pay increase. You know, I mean, it's not, it's just, you know, it's just, you know, that's just kind of an interesting juxtaposition, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but
So, yeah,
Yeah, but again, if you extend that to
yeah,
the Board of Education
yeah,
has negotiated compensation contracts.
yeah.
Warwick has its own compensation plan. I think the point to be made is that the library employees are not part
Yeah,
of
that's true.
the county, they're not part of the county employment base. And therefore, their compensation is not something that falls under the county executive's purview,
You know,
any more than the Board of Education's done.
Oh, yeah.
What falls under our purview is we have X in resources and we have Y in requests, and how do we do the best job we can to sort out those requests and allocate to the priority areas that we think are the priority area. And that's the reason that we have these work sessions, so that we can have that discussion.
I have to adjourn, I have to be in Princess Anne at 1 o'clock.
Guess we gotta go, Wayne.
Thanks.
If I could, thank you, Wayne. If I can, we should adjourn.
So moved.
How about if we don't adjourn?
You guys can stay all you want.